I have 20 minutes. Oh, wait a minute. I need my notes. Hang on. Don't move. Thank you. All right, much better. Hi there. Let me try that again. Hi there. Much better. My name is Rob Figley, and I am the president of the International Brotherhood of Real Bearded Santas. 2 years ago, when I first came to this wonderful association, I was the newly elected webmaster of the association. Last year, when I was very honored to come and speak before you, I was the vice president of the association. And today I speak to you as the president of the International Brotherhood. Of course, when I was elected to this position, it wasn't called the International Brotherhood of Real Bearded Santas. It had a different name. And that's why I'm here today. Gary Casey has asked me if I could please come here and, for a few minutes, explain as best I can to you folks out here what happened to our association. What occurred? What caused this situation to happen? And I very much would like to do that, except instead I'm going to talk about football. How many of you here are football fans? How many of you here are Atlanta Falcon fans? Mary, would you mind bringing my hat up here? Thank you. Just hang with me. Hang with me. Thank you very much. Okay, now I'm from Vancouver, Washington, and we really only have one professional team, and that's the Seahawks. And I would like to tell you all that the best football game I have seen in the last decade was the playoff game between Seattle and Atlanta. Agreed. That was a great game. That was fantastic. And that was Georgia, Alabama this year. That was a good one. That was a very good one. Actually, you know, I'm a football fan. I will sit and watch football, including high school, college, Division III, Canadian rules, and 7-man rugby. You know, I will watch any football, and I love it. Now, if you are an NFL fan, you know that this football season did not start in the best way. Let me reset the scene for you. Let me talk for just a moment about what happened this year. As preseason opened up in the NFL, there was a labor strike and a labor relations disagreement between the management of the NFL and the NFL Referees Association. And the NFL, in their infinite wisdom, decided that rather than negotiate with the referees, they would just go ahead and hire some replacement refs. So just before the preseason started, they started recruiting referees from around the area, mostly Division III college gentlemen, people who have had some experience but no professional experience. And they trained them for about a month and a half and sent them out to start being the officials for first the preseason games and then the regular season, thinking that we've beaten the union and that this has solved the whole problem. We will simply show that this is all taken care of. Well, you kind of know what happened. The first several games were disasters. And the referees didn't do a very good job, and the game suffered for it. And as the games progressed through the preseason and got into the regular season, a Greek chorus started, and it started in the press, and it was picked up by the players of the football league. And the Greek chorus kept saying, "This is going to cost someone a game. This is going to cost someone a game. You mark our words, eventually, these replacement referees are going to cost a team a game, and then you're going to be sorry this happened." Well, it did happen. About 4 weeks into the season, on a Monday night football game, after a very bad weekend of referee mistakes, on a national stage in Green Bay, Wisconsin, Football City, USA, my Seattle Seahawks went in and played the Green Bay Packers in a very tightly fought Monday night football game that was loaded with referees' mistakes. The game came down to the last play, the last few seconds. Seattle had the ball, and they were down by 4 points. They had time for one more play, and of course it was the old Hail Mary into the end zone. The quarterback took the snap, he ran out, he rolled, he threw a Hail Mary to the corner of the end zone where there were about 4 Green Bay Packers standing, and maybe one Seahawk fan standing close by. The ball landed, a bunch of bodies went up, a bunch of bodies came down and landed on the ground, and everyone saw it. It looked like an interception. The game was over, Green Bay won. But the impossible happened. A referee went running in and called it a touchdown and gave Seattle a touchdown. And the referees went crazy. And the announcers went crazy and the fans went crazy. How could you do that? Well, This clearly was a bad call, and clearly this will be turned over when they review it, because they review all plays for touchdowns in the NFL. Well, they reviewed it, and the play stood. And the press went berserk. And they held that game up, and they took that one picture of the referee with his arms in the air and the other referee waving, something like that, and the bodies laying on the ground, and they ran that picture everywhere. And the Greek chorus that was the press said, look, it happened. The replacement referees cost Green Bay a game. Santa Claus was surely there because Seattle got a gift. They got a win they didn't deserve. Well, it wasn't 24 hours later that the labor negotiations between the NFL and the referees opened back up. An agreement was made, and by the time Thursday Night Football came around, the regular referees were there. And that is not the end of the story. Something else happened afterwards that people did not hear about. 2 months after that game, Sports Illustrated magazine did an in-depth study of that play. They interviewed all the referees who were on the field. They interviewed all the photographers who were taking pictures of it. They reviewed all the film that NFL Films took. They talked to current referees. They've talked to past referees. They've talked to the NFL officials, and they did a very in-depth study. And do you know what they found out? It really was a touchdown. It was not an interception. It was a fair play. And that if the regular referees had been out there, it was close. It was kind of dirty, but it was a good call. But the perception from the fans and the perception from the press was that was a blown call. And by perception, that made things change. Well, what does that have to do with Santa Claus? Well, there's another Greek chorus that's out there. I've heard it. I'm sure some of you have heard it too. It's the Greek chorus of people that say national Santa Claus associations can't work. We're too diverse. We're too across the board. We don't have enough in common. There's too many people who want to grab power plays. There's too many people who want things their own way. There are too many people who are trying to tell other people what to do. No, national Santa Claus associations can't work. And they point proudly to the checkered history that Santa Claus associations have had for the last 20 years. A lot of them have failed. Many of them have failed. And they say, look, this is proof positive. Because these associations have failed, Santa Claus associations cannot work. And look what happened to my group, the group that I belong to, that I'm president of. Another chunk fell off. Another group rose up in indignation, decided that they didn't want anything to do with a national association. But is that really what's going on? Is it really about Santa Claus associations? Is it just us? Well, I looked into it and I found out some very interesting things. Let's see if this makes a difference into our perception of Santa Claus associations. Do you know that since 2008, the year this association was formed under a different name, just over 50% of all startup corporations begun in the United States have already failed. Little over 50% of all startup corporations, 1 in 2 corporations in the US have already shut their doors. They've given up, they've shut down. Nonprofits are even worse. Depending on which set of statistics you look at, between 66 and 75% of all nonprofit associations. Think about that for a second. All nonprofit associations in the United States, started since 2008, have failed. That is between 1 in 3 and 1 in 4 that are still in operation. But it gets worse. Here's one more statistic for you. Nonprofit associations that are started and maintained by citizens over 55 years old fail at a rate of 85 to 90%. 9 out of 10 nonprofits started in the United States since 2008 that were run by senior citizens, for senior citizens they say over 55, are already gone. Now, compare Santa Claus associations to that, and we look pretty darn good. We've been here for 4.5 years. We've got a membership of about 1,050 people, and we've made a lot of mistakes, but we're still standing around. Why do nonprofits started by senior citizens fail? There have been studies. They've looked into it, and they found out some very interesting things. To be exact, the stuff they found out is so interesting, they named a disease after it, a psychological syndrome. You want to know what they call it? Founders syndrome. It's called look it up, Founders syndrome. Founders syndrome is that situation where the starter, the founder, or board of directors of an association willfully makes decisions destructive to the association strictly in the sense of keeping themselves in power. Think about that. It happens accidentally. And the mantra of these people who have founder syndrome, who make willful decisions that are harmful to their association, put it under an umbrella phrase, and you've all heard this phrase: we're doing it to save the association. That's what they tell themselves. That is how people who cannot let go, cannot give up, cannot pass on power, cannot let the association grow, that's what they tell themselves. I'm doing you a favor by doing this. And then that frees those people to do whatever strange thing they want to do. Well, in the Santa Claus world, we've done a lot of strange things. Of all the things you're not supposed to do, starting a nonprofit, we've done them all. When you start a nonprofit, you should hire a professional. You should not trust yourself to figure out what IRS laws and state laws are for nonprofits. We didn't do that. To be exact, I don't know of a single Santa Claus association that has done that. Santa Claus associations tend to think very highly of their own personal ability to handle their business. That is a pitfall. Santa Claus associations also vastly underestimate the amount of work that's going to be involved in keeping the association running. We've done that as well. Santa Claus associations, unfortunately, grow a leadership that takes an adversarial stand to partnerships with similar associations. We do that also. There are several regional organizations out here that we should be partnering with and working with and reaching out to, but we don't, because we're over 55 and we have it in our mind that if you're in the same field I am, you must be competing with me. You must be my enemy. You must be fighting me for something. It's not that way. Modern nonprofits work together with similar organizations, and we all work together to grow old. And here's the next big kicker. Citizens who are over 55 starting nonprofits do not grasp the importance of social media and electronic communication. We live in the last generation that are not computer savvy. We're it. After our group goes out, the next generation coming in, we're living with computers. They've had them all the time. We're the last of the people who had to learn them when we were older. And a lot of our demographic don't use computers still. Approximately 1/8 of our membership do not have email addresses. Several of them have never owned computers. This is not going to happen anymore. The future is in two-way communication. This is how nonprofits grow and reach out. This is critically important to growth of your organization and the growth of your local group too. So, in a nutshell, that's what happened. We are a bunch of replacement referees. We were asked to step in and work on something that was a little bit over our head to create a nonprofit that generally you should hire a professional for. We made mistakes when our paperwork was filed. Our paperwork was filed incorrectly, and we paid the ultimate price for it. By trying to do it cheap, by trying to do it ourselves, by trying to save a few pennies, we end up spending thousands of dollars. What's going to happen for the future? We're going to correct this. We're going to get the state of California paperwork taken care of. We're going to become a nonprofit in the state of California, and we will move forward with our new name, the International Brotherhood. We will continue to grow. As long as there are people like you out there who need our services, that need the things that a national association can offer, we will continue to move forward. We will continue to serve you as best we can. I would like to talk to you about what's set for the future of our association. But to do that, I would much rather invite up someone else much more positive than myself, my good friend and the chairman of the board of directors of the International Brotherhood of Real Bearded Santas, Mr. Jac Grimes. Come on up, Jack. He's going to talk about what's in store for us for the future.
Speaking of technology, Rob has his notes on paper.
He's got a touchpad.
So, where do we go from here? And how is what happens in the International Brotherhood of Real Bearded Santas relevant to Atlanta, Georgia? Relevant to Birmingham, Alabama? Relevant to Tampa, Florida? Relevant to Greensboro, North Carolina? First of all, let's take a look at why all of us do what we do. And I'm from Greensboro, North Carolina, grew up there, spent most of my life there. In fact, my family's been in that part of North Carolina since the early 1700s. So I'm kind of rooted to that spot. But when my beard started turning white and my hair started turning loose, and having a girth like most of us do at this age, and the kids started saying, well, you look a lot like Santa Claus. And somebody said, well, maybe you should actually do that. And does this sound familiar?
Yeah.
But we in our industry have a catchphrase that we like to use. And the catchphrase that I hear more and more from all of us, and I've been known to say it myself, is we do this for the children. Anybody ever heard that?
Yep.
Anybody ever said that?
Yep.
Let me tell you something. We do this for ourselves.
Yep.
Our children and our clients' children, the children we interact with in the malls, the children we interact with at parties, the children we see at Golden Corral in the middle of July that walk up to us and say, boy, you sure do look like Santa Claus, are the beneficiaries of what we do for us. Okay? Does that resonate with anybody?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
When you first put that suit on in early November or middle November, and you first sit down in that chair, and that first child walks up to you with a gleam in their eye and an absolute awe of the person that is sitting in front of them, what does that do to your heart? I know what that does to my heart. And I do this for me. And I do this for them. So with that in mind, what can we do for each other? Now, I've gone to a lot of Santa events, and a lot of you have, and I've been to this event several times. In fact, I've been to this event, I've missed it a couple times, but I was at the first one in 2007 when Gary put this together. And what I learn every time I go to a Santa event, I learn from you. Because during the Santa season, when we're in the chair, when we're at the party, when we're in the mall, we are a solo act. But you know what I have found through my 59 years crawling around in this lot? I'm not the smartest guy in the room. And guess what? Neither are you. But together, we are very intelligent, because you will run into things that I haven't run into. And you will understand things about the Santa industry and about the Santa world that I will pick up from you and I will be able to go and use. So that brings us to associations. What is the future of our National Association? This is going to sound odd saying this, but the future of our national associations is actually in our chapters. Because I'm a good friend of Gary Casey's, I'm a good friend of Cliff Snyder, Rob Figley, Santa Dave, who comes to our event in North Carolina every year, Bob Elkin in Florida. But you know what? When I have a gig that I can't do that I need to refer, Rob's in Vancouver, Gary's in Atlanta, but Cliff is a few miles from me in High Point. So where am I going to go? When you guys need to refer, and I know all of you would prefer, like I would, to refer to somebody you actually know. Because when somebody says, well, if you can't make my party, do you know somebody that could? You feel like that's a reflection on you. So you're not going to send somebody to that party to represent you and to represent us as Santa Claus without knowing a little something about it. That's where chapters come in. Referrals, but more importantly than referrals, being in a local chapter or a local organization, we have opportunities to fellowship. You know, when we're in the season by ourselves, we're all alone. And nobody really understands the work we do except those of us that do this work. We understand what that's like, being in a chair by ourselves. We understand when those hard questions are asked, like, all I want for Christmas, Santa, is for you to bring my mom and dad back together again, or bring my father back home from overseas in the military. We know what that feels like. We can relate to each other in that way that really nobody else can. So chapters are about referrals, but chapters are also about fellowships. Chapters are also about local customs and traditions. Rob and I have had quite a bit of discussion about what is common in Vancouver, Washington. And it's not exactly the same thing that I run into in Greensboro, North Carolina. But Cliff Snyder, who lives in High Point, North Carolina, understands local traditions and the local customs. And in Atlanta, I'm sure there are some differences, as there are in Florida. That's an important component. So if the most important thing about our future of Santa associations is local, then why do we need national? And I know there are several Santa groups that ask that question. Well, here's why we need a national association. We can do more as an association of chapters in a national association than any individual chapter can do. And the reason we can do that is sheer force of numbers. We just recently surpassed 1,051 members in the International Brotherhood. That's a lot of guys that do this work. And I am not talking about associate members that are Mrs. Clauses or people that are in the Santa Claus or Christmas business. I'm talking about people like you and me that have a real beard, that put on the red suit for part of their living or part of their charity, part of the year. We can, as a group, afford to buy a better and offer to our members a better insurance policy, one that offers molestation coverage. And I would love to say that we live in a world where that's not important, but I can't say that. And probably those of you that are new to the Santa industry realize and remember, no matter what Santa school you went to, the first thing you were taught is have both hands in the photograph. Does that sound familiar? Okay? That's because we live in a world where we can be easily accused, and that's a shame. But we have the national forewithal and the numbers to help protect you. We have the national forewithal and numbers to provide a comprehensive background check that allows us to offer insurance with molestation coverage at an affordable price. But we also have the ability to have a national convention that brings all of our local chapters and all of our individual members in different parts of the country into one place to learn together. And isn't that really, when you think about it, isn't that what you're doing here today? Whether you went to school with Mert, or whether you just came for the luncheon, didn't you really come expecting to learn something from one of your brothers or one of your sisters? I mean, that's why I came. That plus I love Atlanta, especially the 2 hours Rob and I spent in traffic yesterday trying to get to the World of Coke, which we did. In 2014, we're going to Tampa, Florida, and our last convention was in San Diego. And in 2 years, our next convention is going to be somewhere else in the country. We are kicking around the idea of the middle of the country. We're also kicking around the idea of the Northeast. But what we want to do is make a national association that we as individual Santas can be proud of, and that we can say is actually a brotherhood. Because isn't that what we are? Aren't we just a great big brown fraternity that just happens to have white beards, that happens to love children, and love the work we do? Isn't that who we are really, when it all comes down to it, a big brotherhood? So one of our goals, and probably our primary goal, is to have a strong association and stop all the infighting within our industry and bring everybody together. Are we going to agree on everything? Are you out of your mind? Of course we're not. I mean, to do this work, you have to be of a certain age. We did not fall off a watermelon truck, as they say up in North Carolina, and get to this age without forming some strong opinion, without having some strong life experiences. I'm sure there are conservatives in this room and liberals in this room, and I'm sure that on a lot of issues we don't agree. But on the issues surrounding being Santa Claus and surrounding what we do for the children and what we do for ourselves, on that we can agree. And what we can do collectively and together is make our industry strong. So, what can you do? Most of us that are this age remember John Kennedy's admonition, ask not what you can do for what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. Okay. I didn't have that written down, that's my fault. Anyway, what you can do for the International Brotherhood of Real Bearded Santas is get involved. If you're not a member, join. It's $25. I know you waste more than that on fast food in a week. Okay? Or cookies, or we won't go into the scotch that we drink. So you can join the IBRBS. You can get online and start fellowshipping with your fellow Santas, and you can get involved. Now, what I'm going to ask you guys here in the Southeast to do is get involved locally at the chapter level. There is a Alabama chapter. There is a Georgia and Tennessee chapter.
Right.
Now, I am going to tell you this, and this comes with an apology. We have neglected the chapters over the past year. But, as Rob told you, we had our name taken. Some of our bad setup came back to bite us, and we have been in what I would call a survival mode. I'd ask you to look at any crisis in your family or any crisis in your community, no matter whether that's a personal crisis or a family crisis. What do you do when you go into crisis mode? You pull in and you take care of the business that needs to be taken care of. We've done that on a national basis. Our structure is being written by attorneys so that this can't be an association that is owned by a single person or even a small group of people. This is an association that is owned by its members and that is run by its members. We have free and open elections, and anyone that's a member is eligible to run for the board of directors, and we meet online on Skype, although we do have one face-to-face meeting a year where we all sit down in the same room somewhere in the United States and we talk to each other. So get involved and help us. We are going to promise to you that we are going to make a new initiative to reinvigorate the IBRBS chapters. And we have heard what you have told us, that the local is important and that you want to be involved locally, and we want you to be involved locally. But we also want to give you national support to go with that local support. The next thing I'd ask you to do is share your talents. I don't know it all, although I do consider myself a smart person. Every time I talk to any one of you in this room, I learn something. And I learn something I can use in my business. So talk to each other and share with each other. We're not competitors. Even if we live in the same area, we're colleagues. There is enough Santa work out there that none of us can do it all. No matter what kind of work that is, whether that's parties, mall work, corporate work, or whatever. So share your talents. Share your talents with us. If you have a great idea for something you'd like to present at the 2014 convention in Tampa, and that's just down the road, not all that far, let us know. I've already asked Mert if he'd consider giving us a workshop, and he said yes. And I'd also say, come be with us in May. We're going to be in a great place in the country where there's a lot to do. We're going to have a lot of things to do. We're going to play golf, go deep sea fishing. We're going to go to some venues. We're going to have workshops. We're going to fellowship. And guess what? We're going to eat, probably a lot, which is important to all of us. So Rob and I would like to thank Gary and would like to thank the descendants down here for inviting us to come to your roundtable and address you today and tell you a little bit about what's happening internationally. And we do not call ourselves international lightly because we have members in Australia. I found out this week we have a member in Portugal, and I didn't even know that, in Norway and in Great Britain and in Canada. So our focus is on the United States, but we are in fact an international group. And we would like for you guys to get on the sleigh and come ride with us. So thank you for inviting us, and Merry Christmas, and God bless us, and God bless